Hi, I'm Abby, I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. I highly doubt that it is at this point, but if so, welcome. Vinyl Monday is the who, what, when, where, why, and how do I feel about classic albums in my collection. If 20-minute episodes... Oh, AD, that has not been part of your intro since 2023. If TV show length episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday on 60 seconds here on my channel, over on my Instagram, as well as TikTok. After a very stagnant, there's a riot going on coded month. Yeah, sorry about disappearing there for a bit. It's good that I chose some confessional singer-songwriter albums for our next 3 episodes. Back when I sat down and planned this whole season, in keeping with this trend is our most recent episode of the Dolls podcast. I presented an episode about Mimi Farina. We've never done a 2-parter like this where I write one episode and Emma writes the other, but I love how this thing is coming out. The Dolls Pod is available wherever you stream your podcast, but as always, Apple and Spotify are linked in the description. I had an Iggy Pop solo discography overview going up on Groovy Music Club. I had the 20th anniversary of Cream at Royal Albert Hall 2005 review going up on Tracking Angle, as well as the Laughing Hyenas album review. What else? I've got... there's something I'm forgetting. Oh my god, I launched a Patreon. That's kind of important. I've been a very busy woman this month. On to this week's album. This is one of those pinch me, I can't believe I own this records in my collection. It's very difficult to find to begin with, let alone in the United States. Ironically, for the little success that his band had in the United States, this album, I would say, is more well known. Cut the crap. This week's album is Alan Hall, Pipedream. Congrats if you guessed this one. Remember, if you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my post tab. That's where I post hints to what the next album is gonna be. I make announcements, I host polls. You can find all of that on my channel. And if you so choose, you can always read the written versions of my reviews on my website, linked in the description. All right, let's take the plastic off. So I'm actually not sure if my copy of Pipedream is an original or just a very early repress. From the labels on the disc, I know this is from the year of release, 1973. Original or not, you do not find these in the United States. This and the other albums in this week's video were a beautiful gift from one of my subscribers. If I haven't misplaced or accidentally swapped around notes, if this is the right one, dear Abigail, I do hope this one reaches you and does not become stuck in US customs limbo. Clearly it reached me. Now let's talk about this cover art. My background is actually in art history. I love art as album art. See the Mystery of the Led Zeppelin 4 cover, the Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness collage, a Magritte on the cover of Beckola, the Layla cover. Hey, wait a minute, go back to Magritte. Pipedream reproduces La Lampe Philosophique, the Philosopher's Lamp, a 1936 work by surrealist painter René Magritte, or Magritte, or insert French pronunciation here. For a long time, I thought the Daydream Nation album cover was this candle, super close up, but it's not. That's another work by Gerhard Richter. This candle wraps around its pedestal, and the philosopher smokes his own nose in his pipe. Magritte loved a good pipe. I love Magritte's brand of surrealism, and so did Alan Hull. I also love that the philosopher, modeled after Magritte himself, I believe, he acknowledges the viewer. With an apple obscuring the face or a sheet covering a kiss, we don't often get this kind of confrontation out of a Magritte subject. Charisma Records went to great lengths to get this painting for this cover. It cost £4,000. This doesn't sound bad, but when you compare it to the cost of recording the album itself, an exorbitant expense. Allen also used the Philosopher's Lamp on the cover of his poetry book, Mocking Horse. I can't think of a more literal cover for an album called Pipedream. Pipe, man with pipe. Dream, invoking the subconscious, what surrealism is all about. As this was Allen's first solo album, he's engaging in a little self-indulgence, smoking himself out of his own pipe, and this cover is a callback to a Lindisfarne deep cut called Peter Brophy Don't Care.
Your nose is in your pipe, but you don't care. Your tattered tweeds and a walking.
The Pipedream cover was designed by Ian Vincenti. We have this bubble text. The back cover, pretty simple with all of our lyrics. And opening up the gatefold, not only do I have a 1973 copy of Pipedream in really great condition, I have it with the booklet still intact. Hello! Yeah, B-roll Abby's gonna be showing you all of this. This is kind of incredible! Across this booklet, we have a collage of Allen and the guys in the studio, as well as Allen hanging out with his wife and kids. Orange juice and health foods not pictured. On Pipedream, we have our philosopher Alan Hull, providing lead vocals, guitar, piano, and serving as our principal songwriter. John Turnbull provided guitar, orange juice, and health foods. Colin Gibson provided bass, mental indecision, snuff, and herbal tobacco. Ken Craddock provided piano, organ, keys, harmonium, some guitar, Guinness, wine, tequila, Pernod. I'd like to hang out with this guy. Coca-Cola and anything else around at the time. Dave Brooks played saxophone. That was all he provided, just saxophone. Ray Jackson, aka Jacka, provides harp, mandolin, backing vocals, and rude noises. And thank God Ray Laidlaw provided his drums and common sense. Pipedream was produced by Mickey Sweeney, provided high-level energy. Roll transition. I recognize most of the people watching this episode will already be familiar with Alan Hull, but for those who aren't, here is a brief history of Alan and his previous group, Lindisfarne. Spoiler alert, almost all of the songs on Pipedream came from this period. Alan Hull was a piano and guitar player and songwriter from Newcastle upon Tyne. While Alan played in a band called The Chosen Few, his day job, night job really, he worked the night shift, was as a nurse at the St. Nicholas Psychiatric Hospital. Alan loved his job. Sure, it gave him a little extra time to write, but speaking with his patients changed his whole life. Seeing people in crisis showed Alan just how fragile life is and opened his eyes to the injustices of the world. As a result, Alan begins writing songs from other people's perspectives. Quote, "The way it changed me was the way it changed the things I was writing about. It just made me think about a lot of things." Quote, "We're all on the brink of going under in a sea of madness." Alan didn't let on with his party boy personality and sometimes instigatory behavior, but he was deeply empathetic. He was also a self-proclaimed socialist and wrote about a lot of social issues in his songs. Winter Song is about the homeless.
When winter's shadowy fingers first pursue you down the street.
Money Game about class struggle.
Town in which my old man worked for half a crown an hour, 5 days a week.
This is him embodying the folk spirit. Now, American folk rock and British folk rock look very different. I recommend Rob Young's Electric Eden book for this subject, but their core concerns are pretty much the same. Now, while Alan was in The Chosen Few and writing these songs on the night shift at the mental hospital, Rod Clements, Ray Ledlaw, and Cy Cow played in another band called Brethren. Brethren had started out playing beat music, as it was called, then did the white boy blues band thing and psychedelic rock. It's around 1968 at this point, and Brethren were one of the first psychedelic rock groups in England to ditch the Dayglow for the Back to Basics movement. They start bringing their acoustic guitars to gigs and play more folk-style music. While the Back to Basics thing went crazy in the United States with the band and Bob Dylan, British groups evolved from psych to what they called back then heavy rock. You have The Who, Free, 10 years after, The Small Faces, The Yardbirds becoming Led Zeppelin, Cream becoming... It has been 3 years of this shit. Thus, Brethren and their acoustic guitars struggled to get gigs. Rod was aware of the chosen few and Alan. Alan had been in a group with Ray for a minute, and he was a fan of Brethren. Alan opens a folk club at the Rex Hotel with studio owner Dave Wood. That's where him and Rod formally met. Depending on who you ask, either Alan approached Brethren offering them some new songs, or Brethren approached him asking to play the Rex, and Alan said yes on the condition they bought him a pint. By late 1969, Alan is a full-time member, and Brethren changes their name to Lindisfarne, upon signing with Tony Stratton Smith at Charisma Records. According to Rod, Alan had over 300 songs in his back catalog when he joined Lindisfarne. He pretty quickly becomes principal songwriter, contributing the aforementioned Winter Song, We Can Swing Together, Clear White Light, January Song, and, of course, Fog on the Tyne. Now, Alan's songwriting is often compared to Bob Dylan or John Lennon. Biographer John Vanderkist said, quote, Alan was like a Tyneside John Lennon, shaking his fist at the establishment, the acerbic social commentator who cared passionately for the underdog, the one who could put his closest colleagues or former associates down with an ill-considered remark, and, after a period of reflection, be full of apologies toward the wounded party. As far as Alan's writing style actually goes, both Bob and John are lazy comparisons. Bob's writing isn't quintessentially Minnesota, save for a brief nod to Highway 61, and save for Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane. Lennon and McCartney weren't quintessentially Liverpool. Alan's writing was quintessentially Newcastle. He very often name-dropped locations. It's working class, folksy, and deliberately rough around the edges. And I quote, I think bands that come from raw areas should be raw. The namby-pamby groups that come from Newcastle just fail. A more apt comparison— wait, I have these albums. A more apt comparison to be made would be between Alan and Ray Davies of the Kinks, who wrote several albums about the English identity and Muswell Hill specifically. Muswell Hillbillies. Or maybe to Richard Thompson of the Fairport Convention. Cue that one guy who requests shoot the lights out in the comments sections of literally every single one of my videos. Nicely Out of Tune was received well. Fog on the Tyne was received even better. One creates demand for the other. Where Nicely Out of Tune once missed out on the top 50, it's now peaked at number 8 and charted for 30 consecutive weeks after the success of Meet Me on the Corner, ironically not written by Alan. His Lady Eleanor is re-released as a single and peaks at number 3. Fog on the Tyne peaked at number 1. Stayed there for 4 weeks, they stayed in the top 10 for another 20, and gave perhaps the most unserious performance in the history of Top of the Pops. Charisma Records puts Lindisfarne on a package tour with Vandergraaf Generator and Genesis? What a weird tour this was. 2 prog bands and a folk rock group, but it makes sense. The lines between folk and rock were practically non-existent at this point, and by 1971, the lines between prog and pop are pretty blurry. The guys go on another package tour that year with The Faces, Mungo Jerry, and Rory Gallagher, among others. Critics are praising them as the next Beatles. Oh no! Cue The Next Beatles curse. The BBC4 documentary Lindisfarne's Geordie Genius confidently states that Lindisfarne were at the peak of their career in early 1973 and, quote, against all advice, decided to break up. This simply is not true. The guys were in no rush to follow up Fog on the Tyne. Alan said that their failure to follow up in a timely fashion squashed their momentum. We didn't capitalize or consolidate the success we had right then. We were right at the top and we blew it. It was simple as that. We blew it. When they got around to making Dingley Dell, it wasn't smooth sailing. The band never really gelled with their producer, Bob Johnston. Yes, the same Bob Johnston who was producing Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash. The band believed Dingley Dell to be a better album than Fog on the Tyne, so they naively assumed it would be even bigger. None of the guys at Charisma bothered to remind Lindisfarne that lightning doesn't strike twice. Dingley Dell, crazy title for an album, came out in 1972 to mixed reviews, and it underperformed commercially. And part of this was because they just issued the wrong lead single. All Fall Down is a great song, but it's not a lead single. Lindisfarne deserved to be bigger, but they were just too English to succeed on a large scale. Tourmates Genesis didn't have that regional specificity in their writing. Instead, you had Peter Gabriel doing whatever the hell that was. Don't come for me, I love half of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Despite being associated with Genesis and opening for David Bowie on his Ziggy Stardust tour, Lindisfarne resisted the trends of prog and glam. Alan refused to dress up for any show except for exactly one that he'd borrowed a shirt for. He flung it into the audience only to realize that the front pocket had hundreds of pounds of cash. Lindisfarne were increasingly unhappy with their management at Charisma. They were working them to the bone. Everyone needed a break, especially Alan. The band's move to London didn't sit right with him. He hated traveling and had great difficulty writing on the road. The original idea was for Alan to step back and be an offstage member, like Brian Wilson was for the Beach Boys. He nominated his old friend Billy Mitchell to be his replacement, but this plan went sideways when frayed nerves after a gig in Tokyo kicked up a great big fight between the guys. Alan wanted to fire Cy, Rod and Ray disagreed. Alan made matters worse by pulling a Paul McCartney and announcing to the press that Lindisfarne had broken up before any of the guys had talked it over. Ironic, considering he was the one who said upon Fog on the Tyne's release that, quote, if anyone left Lindisfarne, they would die completely and never be reborn. There's this weird 3-month in-between period, from late 1972 to spring of 1973, in which none of the guys in Lindisfarne really know what's next for the band. This is when Alan recorded Pipedream. Like the last 9 months or so had been weird and difficult for Lindisfarne, these 3 months recording Pipedream were weird and bad as well. The record was supposed to be produced by Ken Scott, but he dropped out as he had other commitments. Producer Mickey Sweeney wasn't really a producer at all. He was just one of Alan's old friends from Newcastle. In addition to Ken Scott taking flight and Lindisfarne scattered in the wind, Charisma Records gave Alan all of 1 week to record Pipedream. There were lots of familiar faces to help the project along. Johnny Turnbull and Colin Gibson were Alan's bandmates in The Chosen Few. Kenny Craddock appeared as a guest at Lindisfarne's last Christmas show. Ray and Jacka play on this record too. Ray said, quote, we had a perfectly cordial relationship about everything other than his remedy for the band's ills, and when he asked me to play on the Pipedream sessions, I had no hesitation in accepting. I'm glad I did. We had a ball, and we made a great record. It's good they were on civil terms, because a lot of Lindisfarne leftovers went on to Pipedream. Money Game and Country Gentleman's Wife came from Fog on the Tyne sessions. United States of Mind was played on their last tour, but they never got around to recording it. Somehow, considering all of the drink and that they didn't have their fucking producer, they managed to do it. The track listing of Pipedream goes as follows. Opening up side 1, we have Breakfast, followed by Just Another Sad Song. Then The Money Game. Next, an instrumental interlude titled STD-0632, then United States of Mind, and side 1 closes with Country Gentleman's Wife. Opening up side 2, we have Numbers with subtitle Traveling Band, followed by For the Bairns. Next, Drug Song, then Song for a Windmill, then Blue Murder, and the album closes with I Hate to See You Cry. Pipedream was released in July of 1973. I found just one contemporary review by Steve Clark for the NME. Clark pinpoints Dingley Dell as the first true Alan Hall solo album. Now, why I find this review so interesting is because Steve praises Money Game and Numbers in particular because they sound the most like Lindisfarne. The songs that are most Alan are singled out as the weakest cuts. Breakfast has, quote, effective and strangled guitar, but, quote, the song's last word goes through some agonizing phrasing, and he likes Blue Murder, but, quote, it does sound like a ripoff of Neil Young's Down by the River, right down to the thud-thud bass. These are small quibbles. Overall, it's excellent musically and lyrically, and since this is the British music press in the early 1970s, of course there are lingering Beatles comparisons. With McCartney's writing a mere ghost of his past achievements. Damn! I forget how real the Ram and Wings hate was back then. And Lennon going through a period of musical inactivity, Alan Hall is easily one of the best songwriters currently around. Like Lennon, he has that northern bite, which makes Pipedream a reality. All other reviews of Pipedream I could find are from the 21st century. This is something of a cult classic. In August, the band's breakup is officially confirmed. Cy, Rod Ray, and Billy Mitchell form a new group, Jack the Lad. Alan and Jacka formed the new Lindisfarne. Alan had every intention of keeping the Pipedream group together, but that fell right apart. Ray joined Jack the Lad with the other old Lindisfarne guys. Colin and Johnny had other commitments. Alan really wanted Phil Collins and almost got him because Genesis were on their post-Foxtrot pre-selling England by the Pound hiatus. But Tony Stratton Smith at Charisma Records advised against it, so Phil turned Alan down. Alan did not hold back in his response, telling Phil he would, quote, regret this for the rest of his life. Oof! Jack the Lad strikes it out on their own to limited success. They're also tied up in this IRA bombing investigation. Crazy tangent I could go about on that. Charisma goes and releases a 1971 old Lindisfarne live album. They didn't bother to give new Lindisfarne, Jack the Lad, or Alan any notice, and it impacted all of their album sales. Pipedream entered the charts at number 29, but disappeared after 2 weeks. It was Alan's only solo project to ever chart, and the only Lindisfarne solo project to ever chart. So, what do I think of Pipedream? The first time I listened to Pipedream all the way through was after I set a potato on fire in my microwave. The rest of the Trifecta group chat clowns on me so hard over Fire-tato, to the point that Nancy added the anniversary to her Google Calendar. In the Lindisfarne's Geordie Genius documentary, it's said that Pipedream was a summation of Alan's whole career thus far. Early songs, songs meant for Lindisfarne, new songs. And this is presented as like some unique quality among debut solo albums. I don't think this is true at all. McCartney and All Things Must Pass both have songs that at one point or another were intended for the Beatles. Of course this stuff will bleed into the solo material, especially if you have a massive back catalog like writers like Paul or George or Alan Hall might have. Ringo and John's debuts are exceptions to the rule because Ringo was singing the standards, and John he had a lot going on. The old adage, it takes your whole life to write your first album and a year to write your second, is 100% true for Alan and Pipedream. This is a perfect extension of what he was doing in Lindisfarne. If January Song off Fog on the Tyne were a whole album, it would be Pipedream. What makes Alan Hull special? His ability to tell a story, both in the music and the lyrics, about his own writing. Alan said, quote, "I don't believe in saying things definitely. It's not my philosophy. You can say what you think a thing is, but you can't say it's either bad or good. I just don't like a philosophy of directness, a complete yes or no." The opening track of Pipedream, Breakfast, is certainly one of those gray areas Alan loved to write about. I'm not sure if this was intentional or just on my press, but there's a whole 5 seconds of silence before Alan comes in on the first line. 5 seconds doesn't sound like long, but it's an eternity when you drop the needle and are expecting sound to come out. Alan loved double tracking. He does so for most every lead vocal on most every up-tempo song on this record. The two Allens are accompanied by just his guitar on the first lines. "In the morning you rise, night is still in your eyes, moving warm with content, memory of your body scent." It is closeness, but something's off. There's no physical intimacy, only the memory of her scent. One of these things does not belong here. Then come my favorite lines in any song Alan ever wrote. "I watch you striptease in reverse, dip my hand in your purse." Striptease in reverse. It's surreal, like watching a film backwards without the sound on. It's voyeuristic and transactional. This guy even fishes a few bucks from her purse. We have a wonderful example of Alan using the music to the lyrics' advantage when the band kicks in on the word scream. The band stamps in with strong bass and drums and a bossy electric guitar riff. The little scrap of lovey-dovey haze that we feel is drowned out by a screaming kettle, reminding you and me we need a cup of tea. Intimate breakfast scene with sausage, egg, and beans, Weetabix and jam with lightly grilled ham. It's overly descriptive to the point of coldness, like a script. Intimate breakfast scene and listing out all the props you need to recreate it. These two only act out domesticity, because when he asks her to stay, "No, my child is all alone. Don't ring me on my phone, my husband will be there. It really isn't fair. He still believes in trust. I've gotta catch my bus." She's married with a kid! Alan held out on dropping this bomb for as long as he possibly could. He uses these little turns of phrase, though, to make this romance feel like a farce, before he actually tells you that it is. I find it interesting how Alan writes about an affair. It's typically portrayed in the media as this passionate, dangerous, star-crossed lovers thing. You know, like... Alan writes it as loveless and sterile. He's shown the reality of the situation after the excitement wears off. It leaves the narrator feeling totally empty, as if dipping his hand in her purse was an indication. The music softens again after she leaves, having taken the chaos with her. Alan sings, "Wondering what's in her head, I slowly sink back to bed, and I feel so empty, I must be." The phasing goes crazy on the word to obscure how the man truly feels. There's this great jamming coda with the band and Alan just going nuts on the piano. In records like these, a Deja Vu or a White Album with a lot of stylistic variety within the package, I often pick out the first 3 or 4 songs. I'm just now realizing that Pipedream has a really weird opening sequence. We've just had Breakfast, which is very quintessentially plugged in Alan. This is how he likes to write, and this is how he likes to use electric instruments. Then we have Just Another Sad Song, which is a Badfinger song masquerading as an Alan Hull song.
It's just another case of human. No matter what you are, I will always
harmonies, the dueling guitars, the catchy power pop riff, the hooky chorus, even the happy song with sad lyrics echoes the bittersweetness of a band that got totally screwed over. Just Another Sad Song is written for someone with main character syndrome, you might say, who's down on their luck in life. They're used to everything going their way, but now they're sulking and they've lost the girl. Alan deals them a little tough love. But it's just another case of human misunderstanding. It's just another sad song. People are bad at communicating their intentions. Shit happens! How you respond to that is up to you. As much fun as Sad Song is, and how striking an opener Breakfast is, Money Game is the first truly remarkable song on Pipedream. So far, we've been tight to the rock side on the folk rock spectrum. This is the first taste of a pastoral, folky flavor on the record. Finger-picked guitar, mandolin, celeste, even harmonium. This album might just fix the harmonium for me. And a quirky, delightful, scatted intro. If my love for Andalusia and Famous Blue Raincoat are any indication, you know I love a song written as a letter. On the surface, Money Game is a young man writing to his lover Anna to woo her. Look beyond the dazzling melody, so memorable and fast-moving and with a million fucking chords as demonstrated in the BBC documentary. Look deeper than that. And Alan is calling out how exploitative and shitty the guys up top are. I know your daddy is very wealthy and that he owns half the town in which my old man worked for half a crown, an hour, 5 days a week, who was too tired in the night to speak about the things in his head. The narrator's father is a smart, capable man, but the guys up top see him as just a body and a cog to expend. They keep him tired so he can't revolt. The sweeping waltz chorus with harmonium and keys sung like a true bard with more than a healthy dose of youthful bravado. Oh, Anna, what does money mean anyway? I've got more than all that. I can smile when it's a rainy day. I can see what's behind the big money game they all must play. Our narrator's saying, hey, Anna, if we don't have the money, we won't have their problems. All I need are the simple pleasures, and those I can very easily give to you. The system's rigged anyway. Oh, Anna, it's not too easy to play the game when you know the rules in favor of the man who has some golden cufflinks for his silken shirt and who never sees the dirt. Side note, Alan's accent makes it sound like he sings silken 10 times better. He makes one final Romeo and Juliet appeal for her to ditch her stuffy family. The accordion kicks in. Our lover boy has taken his woes to the pub. It's rousing. It makes you root for the guy, and Alan just soars over the top. He is showing the full capability of what his voice could do. Alan's inherent northernness, pub songs aside, even extend to the instrumental tracks on Pipedream. An otherwise innocuous interlude is titled STD-0632. I thought this was some cryptic dirty joke, but turns out it's the dial code for Newcastle. It is nice and a way to let the Lindisfarne and Chosen Few guys have a little fun on their instruments, but here it interrupts the flow of the record. I swear to God, I have heard United States of Mind somewhere before. I don't know if it was in some film or TV show in the 90s or 2000s. I have heard this somewhere before. Now we've gone from the rock spectrum of folk rock all the way to the folk side. Gorgeous guitar playing is made madrigal, with clicking drums, subtle wheezing harmonium, trilling mandolin, and droning backing vocals. It's a fittingly delicate song about the delicate balance between real life's complexities and real life responsibilities like bills and shit. Our narrator has found a meditative state in just taking a walk outside. Rain or shine. I'll let it thunder, let it whistle, let it blow like hell. I'm not really caring. The children laugh, the rain cloud has a silver lining, and his state of mind needs no repairing, refining, or defining. You know how I say joy is an act of defiance in a society that wants you divided, scared, and compliant? Take a listen to this verse. Yesterday was painted gray, and I found no reliable way of knowing what tomorrow's colors might say. While heads around me turn and twist at situations that don't exist, I'll let it rumble, let it whistle, let it blow like hell, I'm not really minding. Our narrator is choosing to look on the bright side of things in defiance of all the outside meddling. When there are bigger things happening that you can't control, you focus on you and your circle, building that community and, having refuge. Alan can't change the past, and he doesn't know what the future holds, so he's focusing on the simple joys in the present. The side one closer, Country Gentleman's Wife, was inspired by the bored housewives Alan met back when he was a window washer. You know the type. Dressed up in the middle of the day, bored with their old-ass husbands, and hitting on young men who worked for them. This puts breakfast in a new light for me. It makes me wonder if, in Alan's youth, he might have taken up with one of these ladies at one point. Country Gentleman's Wife is raucous fun, though it's just Alan and his guitar. It feels like he's stood on top of a chair or on top of the bar and we're passing a pint around, hearing about all the ridiculous ways this lady tried and failed to seduce him at work that day. Neither wealth nor sex nor an appeal to his emotions work on this guy. No country gentleman's wife can get possession of him, get him for game, or get him in the nude. He gears up to gently turn her down. I said I was a man with principles and respected the marriage vows, but if she really wanted to, she might persuade me somehow. Oh? What might change his mind? 1 square meal a day and an unlimited supply of booze, that's what. I find it hilarious that this guy's list of priorities are as follows: lunch, beer, Country Gentleman's Wife. Just goes to show you that food is the way to a man's heart. Opening up side 2, we have another more pop rock number, Numbers. I'll just call it Traveling Band. It's an autobiographical song about Lindisfarne's tour with Van der Graaf Generator and Genesis. But Alan takes this opportunity to hit back at the industry bigwigs he feels are using him. The guys are out on the road, playing their dominoes and boozing it up, but it's hard work. Back on the big coach in the morning, head full of pain. Sleepy eyes still yawning, we're back on the road again. We've seen it time and time again in rock and roll, right? People get hooked on substances because it's what gets them through the grueling tour schedule. You take uppers to wake up, then comes all the booze because everyone wants to party with you, and then you need sleeping pills to get to bed at night. Meanwhile, the press men and yes men and their wives get to go to the fancy receptions on the musician's dime. The hook may be Traveling Band, another wonderful Alan melody on this song, but the title is Numbers. It's all about the numbers for these guys at the top. Never mind the actual bodies hitting the road. But eventually you do come home from the tour, and hopefully you come home to something that matters. For the Bairns is a sweet song about the joys of fatherhood. Nothing bad has happened to Alan's daughter yet, not much worse than going to school and being tired at the end of the day, but Alan's got his response lined up for when she does come crying to him one day. And it's in line with a lot of the writing on this album. Pretty soon I'll tell her that the wickedness and strife are only parts of living, not life. Then comes Drug Song, one of Alan's own favorites he ever wrote. It was a set staple of his. He also said it was the only song he wrote on drugs. Alan doesn't come right out and say, drugs are bad. Drugs are bad. Okay. Talk about aging myself. Coming right out and saying that would be too black and white, too obvious for Alan. Well, maybe the last verse is black and white to the point of being cheesy. You know, the crying mother and the casket floating by. Drug Song's best moments communicate the directionlessness that makes people turn to substances. Drug Song's best moments communicate the directionlessness that makes people turn to drugs. How did Alan's work as a nurse at a mental institution lend to this song about getting to the root causes of substance abuse? You seem to forget that before the days of rehab, especially in a working class community like Newcastle, they threw alcoholics in the loony bin. Our narrator tries all sorts of drugs, marijuana, speed, acid, but none of them work. Speed only makes him run around in circles, and tripping bore no life-changing epiphanies for him. The drum and bass give backbone to the breezy Pink Floyd-esque acoustic guitar, piano, and even slide guitar. Alan's anchorless melody, often trailing off at the ends of his verses, add to the aimlessness. Rob Webb for the BBC named Windmill along with Money Game as, quote, peculiarly northern English takes on the protest song, caustic fables of mill owners and brass in pocket. The narrator of Windmill isn't appealing to any Anna, he's gone right to the worker, and in my opinion, that's why it's not as successful of a number as Money Game. Though Alan hated writing straight love songs, there was this inherent romanticism in his writing. You see it in how he treats nature in United States of Mind, or as he treats a real lover later on this record. When he tapped into that, especially on his social cause songs, they succeed. Blue Murder is Alan's most popular solo song. It's also apparently a diss track aimed at Rod. Quote, I think Alan held me partially responsible for the band's 1973 split, which was definitely not the case. That arose from Alan being pretty unbearable and hardly speaking to the rest of us for about a year, then announcing that he wanted to replace Cy, which I resisted, then announcing to the press that the band was splitting before it had been fully discussed. I loved Alan, though he could be infuriating. We had our own personal, naughty shared humor, and we had some fun escapades together. If Blue Murder really was about Rod, Alan calls out his perceived fakery. Hey, wake up, take off your makeup, or don't you dare. He does recognize his own faults. He thinks he kinda sucks, actually. I am what you think I am, man. I really do not care. I am the Apple Man, and I'm rotten to the core. Crazy line! But that's neither here nor there. The root of the issue is in the last verse. Would you like to sweep it clean and use your nice new brush? Or take a chance on the future, get swallowed by the crush? Alan is sick of this guy brushing things under the rug for the sake of saving face, and he's sick of this guy playing it safe when he knows he wants something more. If you want to pull it off, you're going to have to learn to push. He needs to learn to advocate for himself. It can't all fall on Alan's shoulders all the time, and they need to hash their shit out. The time has come for us to scream Blue Murder. Blue Murder's tension only ever halfway releases with these crazy harmonies and Alan flipping the two-syllable word murder into three. Murider. 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 It sounds better when he does it. And there's this really weird reverb he's plopped onto the final verse. There's reserved, buzzing, even strangled guitar. It all feels like it's chomping at the bit. This is a great band, and they're always on the money. But now that I've read Steve Clark's review, I can't unhear the crazy horse boom boom thack, boom boom thack, boom boom thack that haunted me for like a month this fall. Closing out Pipedream is the song that I actually wanted to hear while completely dejected and having burned my dinner and smoking a cigarette indoors, but I'd smoked it all at this point. The closer, I Hate to See You Cry, was written for Alan's wife, Pat. They married back in 1966, I think, and Alan was one of those rare examples in rock and roll where he stayed married to the same woman for his whole life. After lush folk numbers and really accomplished folk rock stuff, I Hate to See You Cry is arresting in how unvarnished it is. I Hate to See You Cry makes the sun desert the sky, makes my dreams all run dry, can't tell you why. Just Alan and a barroom piano. No overdubs, no double tracking. We've had so much double tracking on this record that when it's gone, it feels really weird. It sounds like he's cut this all in one take. He just had to get it out of his system and on the track. One perfect voice crack on the word sun is left in. Alan's voice was virtually immaculate, so I believe leaving this in was a deliberate choice. I Hate to See You Cry is so plaintive and undone, it feels like it's on the wrong record. The narrator of the last 11 songs could not possibly be the same narrator pouring his heart out, singing, I swear by the sun above, I'll give you every bit of my love if you'll just let me see you smile once in a while. It's a gorgeous emotional one-off performance by Alan, just wringing out every drop of sincerity he can. But when you completely strip an Alan Hall song back like this, it reveals the power of his voice to you. It was warm and passionate, his accent was pleasing to the ear, and his intonations were so interesting. He had a way of hanging onto and flipping a consonant that was truly unique to him. And his songs are a bitch to sing. When they're not really high belts like Hate to See You Cry, they're rangy and there's so many little inflections to get right. For a songwriter to have even one Breakfast, Money Game, United States of Mind, Blue Murder, I Hate to See You Cry in their whole discography would be a triumph. And then you have Alan Hall, who had all 5 of those on one record. This is like condensing all of the highlights on All Things Must Pass into one album. This one record is so good, Alan never needed to follow up. He had this biting sense of humor with this tremendous capacity for empathy. It's evident in his lyricism, equal parts witty, heartfelt, and wise. I want to emphasize that last point, wise. A lot of people praise Alan's storytelling, but what's the moral of the stories Alan tells? You've got to look out for your fellow man, yes, and you've got to keep your head on straight. There's temptations and distractions everywhere. Extramarital affairs, money, being in a rock and roll band, drugs, and the emptiness that drives people to seeking them out. Pipedream is a warning against emptiness. Alan's songs all say that life is meaningless if you don't have people to share it with. A wife you love, children you pour all your energy into raising, friends to go get a drink with. And it's meaningless if you don't say what you fucking want to say. You'll spend your whole life bottled up and appeasing other people, the man up top, and that's no way to live. I think of the year that Pipedream came out, 1973. This was the year of stadium rockers and their private jets, glam rock, and glittery cape-wearing proggers releasing unsatisfying double albums. On paper, it's pretty straightforward for 1973, but when you dig in, it's quite complex. Alan's melodies are impossible to sing without the breath control and his very specific voice. Pipedream is so universal in theme, but the delivery is so true to the artist's soul. Almost too specific. There's 3 layers of jokes to the cover alone. Pipedream is a remarkable package overall, especially when you remember the circumstances, lest we not forget. Alan recorded this thing with 3 parts of a band that had pretty much broken up in a week, and they lost their producer partway through. These are songs about being the little guy, having the odds stacked against you in your personal and professional lives, recorded by a guy with the odds stacked against him. It's a pipe dream this vision could ever have been realized. Just as much so that an album like this could have been a classic. I absolutely believe that Pipedream could be a classic now, if people gave it the time. My personal favorites off this one are Breakfast, Money Game, United States of Mind, Country Gentleman's Wife, Blue Murder, and I Hate to See You Cry. Remember, if you want to keep up with all of my favorites from all of the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. And that's it! That was Alan Hull's Pipedream. What do you think of this album? What do you think of Alan Hull? What do you think of Lindisfarne? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love, and remember, despite what some guy on the internet has to say, your opinion matters. If you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday, Monday mornings at 11, a new Dolls pod every other Friday at noon, and if you so choose, you can give a little extra support to what I do by becoming a member of my Patreon, linked in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!